The latest budget cuts in Taiwan draw a backlash, with warnings the slashes will hurt the daily lives of ordinary people. In Washington, D.C., a delegation from Taiwan gets ready for Donald Trump's inauguration, even though late changes mean they won't be attending in person. Reunions in Israel as hostages return home from Gaza at the start of a long-awaited ceasefire deal. Plus, cross-strait floating garbage has been thrown into the mix of Taiwan-China tensions. Good evening, welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Joyce Zhen. Taiwan's government is warning cuts to its budget could affect public services and its ability to fight Chinese propaganda. It is urging the opposition, which controls the legislature, to reconsider its cuts. Louise Watt reports.
Taiwan's government says its spending plans for this year are at risk unless the opposition reverses its decision to cut $2.85 billion from its budget. That's about 3% of what it wanted to spend. This is another illustration of the difficulties for Taiwan's government since elections last year saw two opposition parties take the majority in the legislature. Those parties, the Kuomintang and Taiwan People's Party, say the government has wasted money in the past and it's perfectly reasonable to cut the budget. But the government says this will make it hard for them to govern and could affect public services and their ability to counter Chinese propaganda.
但是后来在野党又提出要把我们业务费直接砍成1块钱那这个是什么意思呢？简单说就是陆委会所有的业务，包括这个反渗透、反宣传、反统战，然后情资收集、研判等等这些都不用做了。
The opposition is still deliberating over hundreds of other potential cuts. One of the biggest is to subsidies to the loss-making power company. That could affect Taiwan's heavily subsidized electricity bills. Those are the kinds of consequences that the public would soon start to notice. Karma Xu and Louise Watt in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Donald Trump's inauguration is 1 day away. Taiwan's legislative speaker, Han Kuo-yu, is leading a delegation in D.C. for the ceremony. But due to a last-minute decision, the group's plans are up in the air. Leslie Liao reports from Washington, D.C.
And together, we will make America powerful again.
On the eve of his inauguration, Donald Trump speaks to his supporters at a rally in Washington, D.C., promising strict limits to immigration on his first day in office.
We have to set our country on the proper course. By the time the sun sets tomorrow evening, the invasion of our borders will have come to a halt, and all the illegal border trespassers will in some form or another be on their way back home.
Trump will be sworn in as the 47th U.S. president on Monday. Facing frigid temperatures, the inauguration ceremony has been moved indoors and scaled down. It's the first time since 1985 that a U.S. president will be sworn in inside the Capitol Rotunda. And Washington, D.C. has been scrambling to accommodate the new plan. Taiwan's delegation, led by Legislative Speaker Han Kuo-yu of the Kuomintang, arrived in D.C. for the ceremony. The cross-party group includes lawmakers from the Kuomintang, the Democratic Progressive Party, and the Taiwan People's Party. But the sudden decision to hold an indoor inauguration has complicated the delegation's plans. They won't be able to attend the indoor ceremony. Speaking at a welcome banquet in Maryland, Han says the change in schedule won't affect much of their plans.
因为这是大风雪的关系，美方的安排有一点点调整跟变动。那我们是客人，我们完全尊重主办方。
Outside the banquet, protesters calling for Han to step down as legislative speaker, saying he's behind a divided chamber back home. But with the delegation here in the U.S., their focus remains on showing Taiwan's support for the new administration. Aside from the inauguration, they're also set to meet with U.S. lawmakers and think tanks.
Despite the uncertainty around the Taiwan delegation's plans for the inauguration, spirits remain high that their time here in D.C. will be productive. Leon Lien, Laurel Stewart, and Leslie Liao in Maryland, USA for TaiwanPlus.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has said he would, quote, save streaming app TikTok ahead of its looming ban in the country.
We need to save TikTok because we're talking about a tremendous... Who in this audience goes with TikTok? Many? Yeah, very popular.
TikTok thanked Donald Trump for its return after coming back online after briefly going dark on Sunday. Trump has said he plans to issue an executive order allowing the Chinese-owned app to continue operating as soon as he's inaugurated. The U.S. government moved to ban the app in 2024, citing national security concerns over its links to China. TikTok has about 170 million U.S. users. 3 Israeli hostages who have been held in Gaza for the past 15 months of war have been returned to home soil, reunited with their families in return for dozens of Palestinians detained in Israel. As Rosie Gredinger reports, this exchange is the beginning of a highly anticipated Gaza ceasefire deal agreed by Israel and Hamas.
A joyous reunion at a hospital in Tel Aviv. 3 Israeli hostages returned to their families after more than 15 months in captivity in Gaza. Taken on October 7, these 3 women were the first hostages released by Hamas fighters as part of the ceasefire deal agreed with Israel. There were emotional scenes as the first images of the exchange were broadcast.
Super excited. This is the first time we've seen her since that day, October 7th, and we didn't had any signal for life from her for a whole year now. And this is the first time we're seeing her, and we're seeing her walking on her 2 feet, and we're just waiting here to hug her and say how much we love her.
It's a beautiful day. After so long, we got a beautiful day. There is 3 hostages, young hostages, returning home.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was on the phone during the exchange and had his officers pass on a message directly to the released hostages.
אלה החטופות הראשונות בסבב הזה שאנחנו מחזירים הביתה, ואני מבקש גל שתמסור להן, לרומי, לדורון, לאמילי, עם שלם מחבק אתכם. ברוכות השבות הביתה.
Also heading home, 90 Palestinians who were detained in Israeli jails, released in exchange for the 3 Israeli hostages. Some of these prisoners as young as 15 years old. Emotional crowds surrounded the bus carrying them into the occupied West Bank, where they were reunited with their families.
يعني طلعت من النار على الجنة. شو طلعنا من الجحيم. قمعات، ضرب، غاز، بتعد وانت راسك على الأرض. بفوتوا عليك، بضربوك، برشوك غاز. بسبوا عليك، بغلطوا عليك، عجبوا فينا يعني ما سووش اكل فيش حلو فيش ملح فيش ولا اشي حرية كنا نشوف السماء بس بمربعات صغيرة كنا نحكي يا رب نشوف السماء بدون هالمربعات تمنا اول ما طلعنا من باب السجن شفنا جبال الكرمل شفنا السماء شفنا كثير اشياء.
Over the next 6 weeks, hundreds of Palestinian prisoners will be sent home, in return for 30 more of the 91 Israeli hostages that remain in Gaza. It's one of the biggest prisoner exchange deals in modern history. Fighting was halted in Gaza to make way for the prisoner swap, after mediators from the US, Egypt and Qatar negotiated an agreement between Israel and Hamas. The ceasefire was delayed by a few hours, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu alleged Hamas had not provided the names of the hostages to be released in time. But after finally taking effect, outgoing US President Joe Biden, on his last day in office, acknowledged the work is far from over.
Today's ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostages is a result of a principled and effective policy that we presided over for months. And we got here without a wider war in the Middle East than many predicted. And now it falls on the next administration to help implement this deal.
As agreed, much-needed aid is now flowing into Gaza through its border with Egypt. 600 truckloads will be allowed in every day of the initial 6-week ceasefire. Half will be directed into the enclave's north, where warnings have been raised that a famine is imminent.
You can see it behind me. We have now goods coming. We can make sure that 1.1 million people that are on food crisis can get the right assistance. They are able to go back to where they belong, and we will be able to serve them and follow them with what needs to be a long-lasting ceasefire.
But uncertainty remains, as one wrong move from either side could end the truce. For now, Palestinians in Gaza are grateful for a halt in fighting. But after 15 months of bloodshed and destruction, with their homes reduced to rubble, the task ahead is overwhelming. Scott Huang and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Officials on Taiwan's Kinmen Islands have reached out to their Chinese counterparts in the nearby city of Xiamen to discuss the issue of trash management. 400 to 500 tons of trash is removed from Kinmen's beaches each year, much of which floats across from China. Cadence Quaranta has this report.
These are beaches on Taiwan's outlying Kinmen Islands, covered in plastic and other trash, much of which has been carried over by tides from China's Fujian province, just a few kilometers away. Some of the garbage comes from China's coastal aquaculture farms, like these plastic barrels that don't break down easily and can harm Kinmen's intertidal zones, as well as its fish.
因为中国大陆现在也发现说，这个海漂垃圾的这个保丽龙的严重性，所以开始禁止使用这个保丽龙，就改采塑胶的胡同。所以我们现在在海边看到的垃圾的大部分就是塑胶胡同。
Kinmen officials say there are hundreds of beach cleanups each year, removing around 400 to 500 tons of trash. But this has not been enough to rid the island of all the rubbish floating in from China. Despite the complexities of cross-strait relations, with China continuing to assert its claim of sovereignty over Taiwan, Kinmen officials have approached their counterparts in the Chinese city of Xiamen to discuss the trash problem, hoping to collaborate on finding a solution. And it wouldn't be the first time they'd cooperate on waste management.
目前在厦门市这个部分，他们是也有一些 AI 导入的人工智慧的这些监管船，会去了解这些垃圾海漂流的状况，那会做一些海岸上的一些捕捞的协助。
Some of Taiwan's other outlying islands, including Penghu and Matsu, have also faced similar problems with trash from China washing up on their shores, as has Hong Kong. And while officials work on trying to find a solution, there are those here who feel that the management of trash coming out of China needs to start at its source. Devon Tsai and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break. Let it slide. The world's top drift racers descend on Taiwan for the country's first U.S. Formula Drift event. Stay tuned.
Oh, and you two, come. I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Oh.
May the year of the snake inspire new beginning.
Bringing you transformation, peace, prosperity,
health, wealth, and all things wonderful.
Wishing you a healthy and prosperous year of the snake.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Bringing in the new year with Rattle and Charm. TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. The chances of a showdown between the ruling Democratic Progressive Party and the main opposition Kuomintang look to be growing. The two parties have threatened each other's lawmakers with a nationwide mass recall campaign, and in some cases, these threats are now being turned into action. John Van Trieste reports.
This gathering of supporters of Taiwan's main opposition Kuomintang is small, but what it's proposing could send tremors through the political landscape. Each of the three lined up in the front row hopes to become a lawmaker for districts in Taipei, but not through the ballot box. Instead, they vowed to take down the three lawmakers from the ruling Democratic Progressive Party that currently hold those seats through a recall campaign. Lowered barriers to success in recent years have made recall votes a popular way of settling partisan grievances. But it's now at the point where Taiwan's two biggest parties are threatening to wipe each other out with a mass recall campaign covering the whole nation. It started when the DPP's caucus whip vowed that no KMT lawmaker would be spared. And now the KMT's backers are promising to strike back.
吴佩益委员，你说在媒体曾经说过，报复性的罢免是那个地方民众没办法接受的，然后要努力回应的地方民众才是正道。这句话你应该要回复你们民进党那个总召。
As these aspiring politicians see it, this isn't entirely a partisan battle. They say there are legitimate reasons for taking down the rivals in their sights. Lai Yiren says the lawmaker he wants to unseat, Wu Siyao, broke procedural rules in a session last September. Still, Wu is a weighty figure in the DPP, and they hope taking her out will leave it crippled.
那一天，最后提出的临时动议，第一个不符合议事规则。 你拿你的专业在欺骗你的选民，你玩的是资讯的不对等。你明知道朝野协商没有临时动议，你却喊说你要临时动议，并且把自己包装成一个受害人的样子。
These three would-be lawmakers hope that whether arguments like these or just the raw partisan passion in the air win out, voters will flock to sign on to their recall petitions. And the hoped-for battering of their DPP rivals could start soon.
我们这个礼拜将会开始台北市的联署，在礼拜四、礼拜五跟礼拜六、礼拜日，我们会在士林北投、中正万华开设联署意向书的签署站。我们会在拼过年前，大家过个好年。我们第一阶段就达标，我们会把这个当作我们要努力的方向去做。
Meaning the partisan clashes that have embroiled Taiwan over the past year show no signs of easing off. Fu Huahong and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Southeast Asian countries have sent a joint message to Myanmar's ruling junta, advising them not to hold an election during a civil war.
But we told them election is not a priority at the moment. The priority now is to ceasefire and everybody have to stand down. So that is important. And access to all segments on the humanitarian aid in Myanmar.
The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, is urging the warring factions in member state Myanmar to engage in dialogue and find a path towards peace. Myanmar has been embroiled in a civil war since its military staged a coup in 2021. The UN estimates over 17 million people in the country need humanitarian aid. A group of hunters has stepped up to the challenge of containing wild boar that are wreaking havoc on crops in China's Qingling Mountains. Rosie Greninger reports.
As night falls in China's Kinmen Mountains, these hunters emerge, scouring the landscape for boars equipped with knives, tracking technology and dogs. Dubbed city hunters, these men have taken on the task of culling the wild tusked pigs, which have run rampant in the region and gained a reputation for devastating local crops.
这是一个公益性的护农，因为我们村呢也就在山区旁边，我们村的庄稼也有，就是每年有受害，所以说我们就是当时我们就是因为好玩吧，跟着一位老大哥带着我们一起去。 打野猪，打了一次我们就感觉哎挺好的。
The boars were a protected species for over 2 decades, but they were removed from the list in 2023, their population soaring to 2 million. That's when locals realised the boars were a problem, costing them thousands of dollars in crop losses.
For
their service, the hunters received bounties of up to $410 from local governments. They've also gone viral on social media, gathering almost 350,000 followers on China's version of TikTok. These men hope to use social media to earn enough money to cover their expenses through advertising and selling hunting products.
前前后后花了大概有100多万，100多万就是不到2年时间，从我们开始玩到现在。收益的话，现在拍抖音还能补贴一点，就是大概抖音能挣个30多万吧。
But there are those who disagree with their practices. Some followers say the use of hunting dogs is inhumane, while animal rights groups claim the boars are important in providing a food source for other endangered species. But with no government push to implement better crop protection or provide compensation for losses, these hunters are the farmers' last resort for helping them safeguard their livelihoods. James Lin and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
The eastern grass owl is one of Taiwan's most endangered birds, with roughly 500 left in the wild. Conservationists have recently found signs that the owls are moving up from the south, taking back habitat and showing promise for efforts to revive the animal's population. Hameokan reports.
With its strong wings, this eastern grass owl launches itself back into the wild. But the bird's numbers don't have the same strength in Taiwan, where it's listed as an endangered species. Last February, conservationists rescued one of the birds after it got tangled in a net in central Taiwan, and ecologists later only found rare traces of the owl in the region. Biologists say climate change, loss of habitat, and pesticides have been putting pressure on the species' population, making them limited to Taiwan's southern areas. But now researchers have carried out a survey that found signs of the owls taking back some of their habitat in central Taiwan, where they have not been seen in decades.
本分属最新的生态调查掌握濒危鸟种草鸮的出现位置，证实除了南部地区，中部地区也是数量稀少的草鸮活动范围。
Best estimates put the number of these owls in Taiwan at only about 500, though global populations are strong, but also under pressure in places like Australia. Civic groups in Taiwan are doing what they can to protect the birds' breeding grounds.
透过我们几年的努力，然后让这种保育类的草鸮不断的有机会在我们这个地方来富裕。那我们希望大家可以针对好不容易能够保留下来的台湾草鸮，能够有更加的珍惜。
The survey shows that conservation efforts have been helping the eastern grass owl return to some of its old territory, but conservationists warn that this majestic bird is still very much under threat. Clan Wong and Hameokan for TaiwanPlus.
Drift racers from around the world burned rubber in the southern city of Tainan over the weekend. The drivers, known for their dramatic turns, are helping a growing motorsport make inroads in Taiwan. Millie Hughes reports.
This is drifting, a motorsport that judges drivers according to their ability to navigate tight turns instead of their speed. Developed in the mountains of Japan in the 1970s, the sport has caught on worldwide, including in Taiwan. Recently, the southern city of Tainan held its debut of US Formula Drift, the world's most popular drifting event. This event is a big step forward for Taiwan, where many drivers lacking public tracks or a league began their careers on the streets.
最早其实就是也不好意思说，就以前也就是在马路上乱飙车的那种，然后那时候就是看那个头文字 D 才知道有这个东西。
While Initial D, a manga series about drifting, may have inspired some gearheads in Taiwan, others say they discovered the sport through YouTubing Japanese drifting legends. One of them, Kenji Yamada, flew to Taiwan for the first time to compete against local drivers at this event.
すごくみんな上手で、レベルが高い。めちゃめちゃ高い。びっくりした。
Drifting culture is still growing in Taiwan, where it has a small but committed following.
あと観客席スタンドめちゃめちゃお客さんいっぱい入ってて、もう嬉しいですね。
有活动我们每次都会来参加啊，因为很喜欢看这个活动这样。
Although comparatively new, as a racing sport, its basic elements, loud and fast cars, will always appeal to younger fans.
Interest, actually it's my kids more or less. Yeah, my kids are very interested into cars. It's a nice opportunity to see how racing is going on here in Taiwan. I come from Europe, so in Europe we have a lot of racings like this, so it's very common. I think in Taiwan not so much, so it's nice to see here.
While many fans came to see the cars and the races, for others this was a rare opportunity to witness top international talent on their home track.
It's important for us to share the knowledge of drifting here. They are developing, like in a year I've seen so much development, and also the cars have been, in a year the level has come up.
Many of the racing fans in Taiwan have seen drift racing go from an obscure and possibly illegal pastime to a well-respected motorsport in their lifetime. Now, with the first ever US Formula Drift event in the rear view, racing fans in Taiwan are ready to shift into high gear. Fu Huahong, Bryn Thomas and Millie Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Joyce Dinh. Take care. Have a good evening.